On behalf of the Statewide Association of Public Attorneys and Prosecutors, my name is James Swink. I'm president of that association for the current time. We welcome the press here and all those others who have showed up today. We'll follow this pattern in this press conference. We'll first hear from our Attorney General, Sean Reyes, and then we'll hear a few brief remarks from Trish Cassell, who's with us today. And she's representing Summit County, and she is she'll be the president of the SWAP board in 2 years. Not this year, but next year. She'll follow up. We'll hear some brief comments from her, and then from Ryan, who is our chair-elect. He'll take over this year, or president-elect. He'll take over. So we'll hear a few brief comments from them, and then I'll talk just briefly, make a few brief comments, and then we'll turn it over for questions. So, Attorney General Reyes.
Thank you very much, Jim. And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We welcome all of our media partners who are here today. It's an honor to stand here with these amazing public servants. It's kind of like in the prosecutorial world, being with the Avengers right here. I'll let you figure out who's who amongst us. But this is also historic in many ways, to have a group of prosecutors come together and not just say what is the minimum standard and what is it that we have to meet, but go beyond that and create best practices, to create standards that exceed even the expectations that other jurisdictions employ. So again, for the Utah Prosecution Council, for SWAP, for county attorneys, the Utah AG's office, we understand that as leaders of prosecutorial offices, the people of Utah vest a tremendous amount of power in our hands, and we have to exercise a commensurate amount of responsibility. We want to make sure that always we're searching for justice, and that those who are guilty are brought to justice, and that those who are innocent are protected. We have come together again, as a group, across state, county, city boundaries, to announce the best practices that we've come up with. I will let others get into more detail about what they are, but again, want to communicate on behalf of the Attorney General's office our appreciation for all of our partners that we work with daily to protect the citizens of the state of Utah, to protect the businesses of Utah, to protect the natural resources of Utah, and again, to make sure that those who've committed crimes are punished justly, but those that are innocent are not. And with that, I'd like to turn the time over now, is it to my colleague, Trish Cassell? Trish, are you next up?
I think so.
Thank you.
My name is Trish Cassell. I'm the chief prosecutor in Summit County. Just briefly, what I want to say is I've been a prosecutor for over 20 years. I'm very proud of being a prosecutor. I'm very proud of representing both when I represented Salt Lake County and Summit County. And what happened in this committee was really wonderful. It was bringing together prosecutors from large jurisdictions, from small jurisdictions, from around the state, to put together best practices, what we believe are the best practices. And what was, I guess, most inspiring to me is we have prosecutors in the state that are committed to justice, committed to fairness, and committed to the people of the state of Utah. And I think that that's what was clear in bringing together the prosecutors from all over the state. And I'm really proud of the work we did and proud of being part of this wonderful community of public servants. And I think it's Ryan now.
Hello, my name is Ryan Robinson. I'm the Chief Prosecuting Attorney for West Valley City. Sometimes we think of prosecution and you think of it in terms of homicide and the big cases that are on TV, but the majority of cases in Utah that are prosecuted are misdemeanors, and often those are typically prosecuted by city prosecutors. We are excited and grateful to have been part of this process where we are working with our county and state prosecutor partners to make sure that whether big or small, that every case we are considering best practices and looking for opportunities to do justice at the big, medium, and smallest levels of criminal prosecution. Thank you.
Thank you to each of you. Now, behind us, there are prosecutors from around the state, from our rural counties, from our more metropolitan and urban counties. We have city prosecutors here. We have state prosecutors, administrators of justice on all levels, and we welcome you. We have our UPC chair here, Bob Church, and if you have questions, any of these individuals are welcome to answer those. But I'll talk about Bob in just 1 second. About 10 days ago, we celebrated a holiday, and Martin Luther King was a big part of that holiday here in the state of Utah and across the nation. And he made the statement, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And the people around me today and their associates around the state feel that deeply. Our primary objective as a prosecutor or a state's attorney is to represent the people and to seek justice. That's what it is, plain and simple. This is best achieved ensuring that the guilty are held accountable. But on the other side of that, which Attorney General Reyes has referred to, that the innocent are protected from unwarranted harm, and the rights of all participants, particularly victims of crime, are respected. That's our primary purpose. And it's a privilege to associate with state's attorneys from across the great state of Utah who are seeking justice, who are in this business to make sure people are protected, both those victims of crime, but those who are innocent. There's a rigorous process of screening cases, and sometimes these things aren't talked about openly in the public. But as we have gone through this process of organizing a best practices committee, we'll start from the beginning and we'll go through the end. And we began this process. So far, we have addressed these issues in this committee, and it will be an ongoing process where we'll address many, many more issues. We've talked about and we've developed office policies about each office, a prosecutor's office across the state, of developing policies and making those open to the public so they can see what we're doing, how we're screening cases, when we would dismiss cases, when we would file cases, that those policies be developed and that they be shared publicly. We've also come up with best practices for preventing improper bias in all prosecution decisions, implementing proper training for prosecutors. And Bob Church is here today, and he does a remarkable arm. That's the training arm for prosecutors around the state. And they plan many, many trainings for new prosecutors, for advanced prosecutors. We have case law updates and statutory legislative updates, and the list goes on and on and on. We could talk all day about that, couldn't we, Bob?
We could.
But we have a strong and effective training arm for state's attorneys, and we appreciate the ongoing training that we get because these are changing times. As we prosecute, we're seeing new evidence and ways of collecting evidence and determining who's guilty and who's innocent in really fast manners. I commend the Attorney General's office that has purchased equipment that you can look at DNA and get results in DNA in a matter of hours, 2 or 3 hours. You can determine whether a person is a suspect, or you can exclude them or confirm that the suspect you have is a player in any crime. The other issues that we have addressed and come up with best practice policy on are the responsibilities of prosecutors to charge crimes, when a prosecutor should file, and when a prosecutor should dismiss charges. We hear all the time about charges that are filed, but the public doesn't always hear about the many, many charges that aren't filed because it goes through this screening process and this rigorous process of vetting and determining whether or not this person should be subjected to the rigors and of the criminal justice system. And we take it very seriously that the innocent are never dragged into a process that would create undue harm to them. I'll just mention a few more of the policies. I won't detail all of them. There are more than I will mention here. If you're interested, we can provide those to the media or anyone else who would like those. But just 3 more that I think are really relevant. First, prosecution discovery practices and ensuring that every office in the state has an open file policy, basically meaning that anything the state has, we will provide to the defendant or their counsel. That's best practice. Obtaining evidence from law enforcement, getting that evidence as quickly as possible into prosecutors or state's attorneys' hands to determine whether or not this case should go forward with prosecution, or additional charges should occur, or whether these charges should be dismissed. And that's an ongoing effort that we are really concerned about and really focus on making sure we get evidence and information from law enforcement as soon as possible. We're also redacting information to protect private information prior to sending discovery. These are sensitive matters sometimes where we have victims of crime that have been subjected to very traumatic events, and our interest is not only proving the guilty and holding the guilty accountable and letting the innocent go as quickly as we can in this process, but also ensuring that victims are taken care of in the process. So you can see prosecutors are to seek justice. We have many considerations in what we do every day. We consider those that are committing crime. We have considerations of determining whether people are innocent and whether charges should go forward, and we always are considering how to best handle victims of crime and make sure their needs are met. With that said, thank you again for being here today. We will take questions at this time.
So why now? Why is this committee something that's needed at this point in time?
Bob? I think Bob, I want him to address, it's something that's interested us for some time, and we've began the process, but I'll let him answer that and we'll follow up.
Can you say your last name?
Yes, Church, C-H-U-R-C-H, and I'm the director of the Utah Prosecution Council. What I first wanted to say is this is nothing new that prosecutors are doing. I mean, these are policies, procedures that have been in place in prosecutor offices for many, many years. In fact, UPC has trained on many of these policies, procedures up to this point. We just have recognized that to be transparent, to allow the public to see what we're doing, to understand what it is that prosecutors go through the process, that we wanted to coalesce all of these policies and practices into one written document so that we can get the information out. There is a trend in prosecutor offices across the country to adopt and establish best practices, to create best practices committee, to have prosecution integrity units in offices. This is one arm of that movement, and we just felt like now was the time to get the word out.
I know that during the interim session there was discussion about a bill that would require prosecutors to give data to kind of look at the decisions that you're making. Does this have anything to do with that?
No, we started the best practices. Actually, almost 2 years ago, we began talking about this. So no, the two are not related. We recognize that part of best practices is providing that information, making that information available. And so we are working with Representative Judkins on that bill. But no, the two are not related.
So do you think that having these best practices in place, I mean, will it change anything at all in your offices, or is this something that you all are doing already?
I can only speak I prosecuted in Orange City for 18 years. We did this. And my guess is that if you were to ask every prosecutor that's standing before you, they're already doing these things. And so, as I said, it's just an opportunity for us as the prosecution community to let the public know what it is that we are already doing.
Yeah, and I failed to mention someone here, and I'm going to have Jeff. Jeff Buman is the executive director of SWAP, and we appreciate his work in organizing this. He's recently been appointed, and this has been a priority for the SWAP board, and as Bob has said, for many years it's been something that we focus on, but organizing on a statewide level is taking it to the next step where we can share, and it's been a wonderful process to have prosecutors from the most southern tip of Utah to the most northern tip collaborate and share what has worked in their offices, what their policies are. And I think there will be some offices that may not have written everything down that will adopt these policies. That is one of our best practices, is that these are written down and that they would be open to the public to view. But Jeff, will you please?
Yeah, I think you answered it. One of the other things that is pertinent for doing this today is that there are trends that go through the prosecution and defense community addressing like the availability or the admissibility of certain types of evidence. And those things may be seen maybe in a metropolitan office long before they're seen in a smaller office in other areas of the state. So we address some of these in our best practices. Some of the offices that have already encountered, for instance, the rapid DNA that the Attorney General uses. Some of the larger offices or maybe the offices that have already dealt with that can help develop, right, here's how you do that, here's the best practice, here's what you should and should not do as you use that technology. And then we can bring it and share that with all offices throughout the state so that everybody is on the same page and able to deal with these issues without kind of guesswork.
I just want to expand for a moment on what Director Church said with regard to this not being new, and I agree with that. Most of all of this, our offices are familiar with. But to be clear again, what's unprecedented is having us all come together with a single document that we're standing behind as a pledge and having that type of coordination and collaboration and frankly education to be able to learn from each other. And so when I made reference to it being historic, wasn't that the principles necessarily were new, but the uniformity and the collaboration statewide is something that is definitely unprecedented in my view.
And I would agree with that. I mean, I didn't want to contradict what Sean was saying. We just have never had a single document like this before.
Thank you for your questions. And thank you for being here today. And if you have any further questions, we've introduced Jeff Buman, who has that document at the ready that can be shared, those policies that we've developed, and we're happy to share those with you at your request. Thank you again for being here today.